I was reading your biography, and you're some kind of guy. You've been shot at, you've been kidnapped, you've been wounded, you've been embedded with the US Marine Corps. You have survived every ordeal. Obviously, you're right here talking to us. What made you choose this career?
Well, I think the career chose me completely by accident when I was at school. Because when I was at school, I had and still do have severe dyslexia to the point of illiteracy. And back in the day, dyslexia was not a thing. I was just branded as stupid. And I left home one day at about 14 and a half years old, didn't go to school and never did go back. But instead of going to school, I wanted to take pictures. As I found out, a lot of photographers I now know are dyslexic. So in those days, I could just bang on newspaper doors and television stations saying, hey, send me somewhere, I can do that. That's how I started.
We're looking, while you talk to us, at many of your pictures, some of your pictures. Gosh, you must have taken tens of thousands. And so many of them are kind of scary because they come from areas of conflict. What makes a really good photograph for you?
Well, it entirely depends on the subject matter, but my subject matter, as you know, is war and conflict, and usually I'm photographing somebody in their quintessential moment of terror. So very quickly, I have to capture the moment that explains that terror, that awful loss. Say for a refugee, they've lost everything in a moment. But at the same time, I have to take that photograph and have some compassion as well. It's just a matter of being in the right place at the wrong time, or the wrong place at the right time. I can never make up my mind.
Absolutely. You use the word compassion. So it's clearly a philosophical challenge for you as well, I presume, when you're taking these pictures and you're in the middle of a conflict, for example, in the Iraq War, when you were embedded with the US Marine Corps. How much time do you have, or would it even be better not to have the time to think about the situation you're in and the stories that the photographs are telling about conflict?
Well, the 2003, I was one of the first photojournalists to be embedded with the United States Marine Corps. The Department of Defense actually made a very good move there, because before the first embeds in 2003, people like myself were always an annoyance to the military and the government, because we're always flitting around the sides and being annoying. So that the DoD, the Department of Defense at that time, in the invasion of Iraq, said, right, come and join us. Now, that was good because they control us in a way. Now, a lot of my colleagues had a lot of bad times with their commanding officers. I was lucky to be embedded with the United States Marine Corps 2-8 Americas Battalion. And the commander there said, right, you've got a job to do, I've got a job to do, let's get on with it. So I was, the Marines have an expression, they are the tip of the spear, and I was on the tip of that spear. But the problem with that particular assignment was that I spent a long time with young Marines and came under fire daily, and I lost a lot of friends. And unfortunately, the objectivity really did go out of the window, because when you're under fire, you're not thinking about the bigger picture. You're concerned to the man to the left of you, the man to the right of you, and those men to the left and right may be 18-year-old boys, and they're saving your life. And on some occasions, I'd come back to base, and some of the boys that I've been with the day or the day before didn't come back. So that was a particularly hard one. Getting some sort of sense of objectivity was very, very difficult.
Apart from all the conflicts that you've been in, and I think you may have been in every single significant or major conflict of the past 40 years since your career really began, it's the work with refugees. Those are the pictures that I press like on the most. I know that not that long ago you were in Turkey working with the UNHCR, and we wanted to get you onto the program then, but then the coronavirus pandemic kicked off and we found it difficult. And here you are. Tell us about the thoughts that go through your mind when you're photographing especially child refugees. I suppose you know that you're there temporarily, that you're going to get on a plane and you're going to go away. And then you've also had a series where you've sort of picked up on refugees that you photographed in the past and thought and sort of written about where possibly they could be now.
Yeah, that's always a thought that goes through my mind. You know, I enter these people's lives when they're at their most desperate, and then I photograph them, take those stories, and leave. And 9 times out of 10, I'll never see them again in my life. Occasionally, I do stamp my little feet with UNICEF or UNHCR and say, look, we really must go back and follow up and see where they are now, to see if they've survived, are they happy, are they rehoused, and so forth. But one of the things I try to photograph with refugees, you see, it's very easy for a photojournalist, a photographer, to walk around a refugee camp and photograph the misery, the squalor, the dirty latrines, and so forth and so forth. But these people, when they have lost everything, absolutely everything, the one thing that no one can take away from them is their dignity. Now, I like to try and photograph these people with retaining their dignity. I don't want to see them scrabbling around in the dirty latrines. I don't want to see them in food queues. Yes, at some point I'm going to photograph the need, but when it comes to getting these people's stories, I try and photograph them with dignity, and especially the women, because they've lost everything in a moment, and they've lost all their clothes, they've lost all their makeup. So when I get into a tent or a shelter or a hut or whatever it is, I ask the women, how do you want to be photographed? And 9 times out of 10, they'll rush into a part of the tent, and they've managed to come away from their home with a little bit of makeup or a bit of rouge or whatever it is, and they'll put it on and come and sit in front of me. And that is the thing for me, is to keep the dignity of these people who've lost everything.
Sebastian, it took us weeks to set up this encounter and to get your internet signal there from your lockdown in Devon strong enough for you to come onto the program. And now you finally have. Wow, thank you so much indeed. Really, really interesting to hear about your experiences. Take care, Sebastian Rich, award-winning photographer.